This is NBC Nightly News with Tom Brokaw.
Good evening. As federal authorities sift through the burned-out rubble of the Waco compound looking for bodies and clues, others are sifting tonight through the statements of the President, the Attorney General, and the FBI, looking for answers to the many questions. Why did the FBI move in when it did? What was the President's role? Why didn't the cult members escape from the inferno? We begin tonight with NBC's Jim Cummins in Waco. Jim, what's the latest there?
Tom, we are slowly learning what happened out here yesterday, very slowly. Few facts were officially confirmed today.
Today, the FBI disclosed that in the first hours of the assault on the compound, most of the cult members retreated into this concrete structure that is still standing in the rubble.
They put their mask on. The people who had masks, they were observed with masks. I think they gathered in an area, a central area where the impact of the gas was limited.
But once the blaze erupted, only a few of David Koresh's followers actually tried to escape the flames. Perhaps they could have escaped to an underground chamber, an old school bus in the ground, but it's doubtful anybody did. FBI agent Jeff Jamar said to the end, most of the Branch Davidians only did what David Koresh told them to do.
One person was lying up on the roof and wouldn't come out. The Bradley even pulled up to talk him to try to get him to come down. He finally fell off the roof. He was on fire. Another woman came out who appeared to be disoriented. She went back into the compound. They got out and went to get her.
But there are still many questions. Jamar said it was a mass suicide in a fire that was set by cult members. But some of those who survived the inferno dispute that.
No, there was no plans for suicide at all.
Jeff Carney is a lawyer for one of the Branch Davidians who escaped the blaze.
But there was no plan to burn their home down, and there was no mass suicide plan ever discussed or put into place.
One Branch Davidian claimed the fire was started when an armored vehicle knocked over a kerosene lamp during the assault on the compound. The FBI denies that. And we still don't know for certain how many people actually perished in the flames. Investigators say the smoldering remains are still too hot to identify all the victims, including Koresh himself. And the big question, why did the FBI take provocative action on day 51?
To say, well, if the FBI would have done nothing, these people would still be alive. That's probably true. For how much longer?
Jamar bristles when anyone suggests the Branch Davidians died because of that.
David Koresh controlled those people's lives absolutely. Absolutely. He's the one responsible for their deaths.
Jamar says FBI agents believe they heard gunfire during the blaze, and they are investigating the possibility that some of the Branch Davidians were shot trying to flee the inferno, Tom.
Jim, any sign tonight that David Koresh's body is about to be recovered?
No sign that David Koresh's body or anyone else's body has been recovered. We've been watching the compound all day and have not seen any bodies come out. In another development, the FBI announced that the Texas Rangers have now taken over this investigation. The FBI has ended its daily briefings, and the Texas Rangers have a long history of doing slow, methodical investigation outside the glare of publicity, so we probably won't learn a lot too soon.
Thank you very much. Jim Cummins tonight in Waco. When that compound went up in flames, many questions went up in Washington, most of them centered on the President and his Attorney General. And NBC's Andrea Mitchell at the White House tonight. Andrea, it was 24 hours before many of those questions were fully answered today.
Tom, it was damage control at the White House today as the President ordered an investigation into the Waco tragedy. After widespread news reports that he had tried to distance himself from the failed operation, the President took center stage to redirect public anger away from the administration and towards the cult leader.
Because the individual with whom they were dealing, David Koresh, was dangerous, irrational, and probably insane. He killed those he controlled, and he bears ultimate responsibility for the carnage that ensued.
He said that before the assault on the compound, he asked his Attorney General the key question.
And the first question I ask is, why now? We have waited 7 weeks. Why now?
The response, the agents were exhausted and there weren't enough reinforcements to continue much longer. Negotiations were going nowhere. The danger of the cult members becoming violent would only increase, and the children were being abused.
Can I say for sure that no one, that we could have done nothing else to make the outcome come different? I don't know that. That's why I want the inquiry.
The President has been criticized for permitting Janet Reno to defend the decision all night, in one television interview after another, without any guidance from her boss.
I'm going to try to talk to the President. As a matter of fact, somebody in your studio has said that they would give me a phone.
Meanwhile, Clinton had issued a brief written statement, gone to a Georgetown restaurant, and visited the Holocaust Museum. Reno tried, but didn't talk to the President until after midnight. Instead, top White House officials stayed in close touch all day with longtime Clinton friend Webb Hubbell, an Arkansas lawyer appointed as one of Reno's deputies. Today, Reno was still handling the tough questions.
General, is your job on the line today at all?
My job is always on the line.
Clinton said today that presidents cannot distance themselves from events such as this. That was certainly clear in this case. Tom?
Thank you, Andrea. As for the cult members, most of us want to know, how could they sacrifice children in such a horrible way, and what was the power of David Koresh over them? NBC's Roger O'Neill has been looking into those questions tonight in Waco. Roger?
Tom, as criticism of the government's actions continue to grow, the FBI insisted today, at times angrily, that David Koresh was the only person who could have saved the children. Their deaths continue to be the lightning rod around the second guessing of the FBI's actions against the Branch Davidians.
Those children are dead because David Koresh had them killed. There's no question about that. He had those fires started. He had 51 days to release those children. He chose those children to die.
Part of the cult's underground bunker system was a bus where authorities said the children could have survived the fire. That's the first place the FBI searched, but the bus was empty. At a prayer service today, it was the faces of the little ones remembered.
Oh God, the children. We weep for the children. The fingers of blame that have been pointed all make no difference here. They are empty and meaningless as we mourn the loss of each child's life.
In Manchester, England this morning, Samuel Henry was mourning the loss of his entire family, a wife and 5 adult children. Henry came to Waco once to try to convince his loved ones to come to their senses and leave David Koresh.
This man is possessed by demon powers, without a shadow of doubt. I know this. And he's able to cast spells on his victims. And once he gets you in his circle, only heaven could let you loose.
Lonnie Little is another relative who saw that circle of control. 3 years ago, he came to the compound to check on his son Jeff, but left, afraid Koresh was getting dangerously close to convincing him to stay.
I was totally convinced that I was getting out of there before he had another day to try and even convince me. I had a hard time for a year. It took me a year to go and study scripture and find out that this guy was goofy.
Mr. Little is convinced that this end, the end that happened a day ago, would have happened inevitably, whether it was on the first day, the 51st day, or the 151st day. Tom?
Thank you, Roger. One of the experts that the FBI consulted before trying to force Koresh's hand is with us tonight. He's Dr. Murray Myron, a Syracuse psychologist, an expert on linguistics. He does psychological profiles from the writings and speeches of people like Koresh. Dr. Myron, you looked at 5 communications that Koresh had with the FBI. What, based on what you saw, compelled you to advise the FBI that they should begin to move sooner rather than later?
It was my judgment at the time, based on the writings that Koresh had produced through his concubine scribe, that he was quite disordered, that the situation would only worsen rather than get better. It was also my judgment that he had no intention of surrendering, that all of his promises to that effect were subterfuges, delaying tactics, in the hope that the authorities would weaken in their resolve.
Did you think that there was the possibility of a suicide pact, especially given the situation with the Reverend Jones, for example, in Guyana?
I did not in this particular instance. All of his communications were future-oriented. He claimed to be working on a manuscript. He was talking about the publication rights to that manuscript through his lawyer. He was intent upon furthering his cause.
But at the same time, he also said that a cataclysmic event would show everyone that, in fact, he was the Son of God or a messenger of God. Didn't that signal you in some way that something terrible could go wrong here?
No, there is specific reference. He made a very specific prophecy that I think the Bureau showed good judgment in not making public for fear that someone would try to work to make that prophecy come true. The specific prophecy was such that of what would happen, that there was no likelihood that that was going to happen.
What about the psychological warfare, the loud music, the lights, the aggravating sounds? Wouldn't that only make the cult members more cohesive in their resistance?
Well, I don't want to second-guess those tactics. It seemed to me, however, as it went on, that it took on the character of sort of game-like tactics, sort of mean-spiritedness. It seemed to me that we were being held at bay and appeared to be indecisive and only weak.
Thank you very much for being with us, Dr. Myron.
You're welcome, sir.
When Nightly News continues in a moment, Bosnia, that country being rocked by new fighting tonight between old allies. In central Bosnia tonight, it's even more chaotic. Some of the bloodiest fighting yet. Fierce artillery battles between former allies along a vital supply road, and the Serbs are not involved in this fight. This fighting around the city of Vitez has been so intense, UN peacekeepers have been confined to their bases. NBC's Tom Aspel is in Bosnia tonight with the latest for us. Tom, what's going on there?
Tom, it's been the heaviest fighting in Bosnia since the war began a year ago. Muslims fighting their Croatian allies, and it's out of control. The whole central region is paralyzed. Muslims have been trying to consolidate their hold on the few towns they have left in Bosnia. They claim peace plans worked out by the West have divided their land up between the Croatians and the Serbians and left them with next to nothing. They're trying to keep as much land as possible before any peace plan comes into effect. The towns the Croatians and Muslims are now fighting over are already packed with refugees from other battles. As long as the roads from the coast are closed, there'll be no UN convoys to feed these people. UN peacekeepers have been able to do nothing. In the past 3 days, nearly 200 people have been killed in and around towns straddling the road from the coast up into northern Bosnia. Negotiations between Croatian and Muslim leaders to stop fighting and face their common enemy, Serbia, have come to nothing. Ironically, the Serbians already control 2/3 of Bosnia. Tom?
Tom, we've got a situation in which a civil war is now deteriorating into anarchy. What is this doing to the aid and the people who so desperately need it?
Well, the fighting is taking place across some of the main routes leading from the Adriatic coast up into northern Bosnia, Tom, and those routes are now cut. It means hundreds of thousands of refugees in northern Bosnia are without UN supplies, and pretty soon the situation of food and medical supplies up here will get desperate for them.
NBC's Tom Aspel tonight in Bosnia. Thank you very much. And the fighting there, of course, remains the Clinton administration's thorniest foreign policy problem. More on this now from NBC diplomatic correspondent John Dancy.
At the White House this afternoon, the president's top military and foreign policy advisors met with Clinton present to decide what else can be done to help Bosnia. One option being considered actively, airstrikes against Serbian gun positions. Secretary of State Christopher on Capitol Hill today says they haven't been ruled out, but
airstrikes are among those steps that are so complex because they tend to interfere with the humanitarian endeavors.
The debate within the administration was mirrored in the hearing room. Kansas Senator Nancy Kassebaum says the U.S. might not be willing to sustain a campaign of airstrikes once begun.
And I think it's unfair to those who are struggling there to create hopes and expectations which perhaps can't be fulfilled.
But Delaware's Joseph Biden favors the strikes to take out Serbian artillery and lift the siege of Srebrenica.
I would respectfully suggest to the senator, if we did nothing else but that, we would have saved hundreds of women and children who are being absolutely massacred right now. Nothing else. That's just one little example.
Srebrenica, which is almost gone.
That's right, because we've not done a damn thing.
Even if the U.S. is willing to take harsher military action to punish the Serbs, the Western allies would have to go along. So far, they haven't. John Dancy, NBC News, the State Department.
In a moment, day 10 of that prison standoff in Ohio, when Nightly News continues. In that Ohio prison standoff, which is now in its 10th day, there's still uncertainty about when it's going to end or how, but there was some movement during the day. NBC's Sarah James still at her post in Lucasville, Ohio. Sarah, what's the latest there?
Well, Tom, there is actually cautious optimism now after 3 inmate leaders met for about an hour and a half this afternoon with an attorney. Nikki Schwartz is an inmate rights activist out of Cleveland, and he was called in by corrections officials. Also, early this morning, corrections officials played an audio tape for the inmates, and in that, they had the state saying that they agree with some of the inmate demands and that they're going to review some of the others. Among them, a demand from Muslim inmates who say they shouldn't have to take a tuberculosis test because it violates their religious beliefs. Tom?
Thank you very much, Sarah. Not far from Hollywood today, there was drama off the screen. At Universal City in Burbank, a sniper fired repeatedly through the windows of MCA's high-rise headquarters. 9 people were injured, 6 by flying glass, none seriously. Under arrest, a former part-time employee. There is a tentative agreement tonight between Greyhound and 5,800 drivers and maintenance workers who went on strike 3 years ago. Among the terms, 550 of those still on strike will be rehired. On Wall Street today, more profit-taking pushed stock prices lower. Trading today was extremely heavy. No secret that Americans want better health coverage, but a new Gallup poll says they're also willing to put their money where their mouth is. 2/3 in this poll say they would pay higher taxes in return for universal health coverage. Reforming health care, of course, is priority number 1 for Bill Clinton. As his plan takes shape, Nightly News will cover the health revolution in America. Tonight, long-term care. Behind the policy choices lie enormous burdens for real families. NBC's Lisa Myers tonight on how one is coping.
For 2 years, 10-year-old Walter Dawson and his mom Clara have struggled so that his dad Cecil can be in a nursing home. Cecil Dawson has Alzheimer's.
He knows my name, but he can't always say it. This has been really hard for my mom and I.
Hard too because of the financial devastation. Most of the money set aside for Walter's college is gone. How did this anything but ordinary kid fight back? By writing letters to the governor and the president, lobbying his state legislature, and today testifying before a Senate committee.
There should be a program for the whole country that covers everyone. It should cover everyone from when they're born until they die.
The problem is that the cost of long-term care is mind-boggling. The federal government already spends $35 billion a year on nursing home care for the poor. Providing comprehensive long-term care benefits for everyone would cost at least $50 billion a year more. That reality probably will force President Clinton to limit benefits for now to home and community-based care designed to keep people out of nursing homes.
The so-called bad news is that you don't get all of long-term care in the first bill.
It may be a decade before there's help for families like Walter's who need nursing home care.
President Clinton may not be able to offer that in his health care plan. How disappointed would you be?
Well, very disappointed because I don't want to think about all the people and know about all the people that have to go through this. It's just not fair for them, and it wasn't fair for my family.
Lisa Myers, NBC News, the Capitol.
Another controversial medical note tonight. RU-486 may soon be available in this country. The European manufacturer of that controversial abortion pill now has reversed itself. It will sell the drug here once it's approved by the Food and Drug Administration, and the FDA, for its part, says it will act quickly. Time now for commentary. John Chancellor with thoughts on Waco and what happened. John?
Tom, what happened in Waco turns an old saying on its head. The old saying is, victory has 100 fathers, but defeat is an orphan. In this case, defeat has the 100 fathers. And it looks as though many of them are in the command structure of the Federal Bureau of Investigation. We are told that one of the reasons for yesterday's action by the FBI was that its elite hostage negotiation team was tired. The siege of the compound had gone on for 51 days. The agents who had negotiated with David Koresh were worn out, and there was no backup team. So they moved. Stop right there. No backup team after 51 days? If that's true, it's a case of terrible mismanagement. A dangerous fanatic and more than 80 men, women, and children were surrounded in a compound for more than 7 weeks. Nobody knew how many more weeks would go by, but it appears that no rotation schedule was established, which would allow the expert FBI agents to get some rest while other expert agents got to know the dangerous fanatic. The FBI has more than 20,000 employees, more than 9,000 agents. The FBI budget in 1992 was almost $2 billion. Yet we are told that the FBI operation at the compound was staffed in such a way that its agents were worn out, and that these exhausted agents were the point men in yesterday's operation. That is hard to believe. In fact, it's unbelievable, but that's what happened. Tom?
Thank you, John. The body of South Dakota Governor George Mickelson will lie in state Thursday at the Capitol in Pierre. The state plane crashed Monday after losing an engine during a heavy rainstorm in eastern Iowa. Mickelson and 7 others were on their way back from a business trip to Cincinnati. All were killed. Today, flags flew at half-staff at the State House, where Mickelson was serving his second term. One fellow lawmaker said, "We lost the heart of South Dakota." For Bill Clinton, for all of us, this week has been another reminder of the unexpected consequences of the powers and the limits of power in the Oval Office. There's nothing in the Constitution, or for that matter in the campaign handbooks, to prepare a president for a religious fanatic setting fire to kids as federal agents ring his compound. This has been a frustrating, sobering, and even instructive experience for us all. That's Nightly News. I'm Tom Brokaw. See you again tomorrow night.